Hello, hello. Long live the new flesh. This is the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is... should I use my real name or should I use my television name?
Your special name
Special
to
name.
Stimulate the cathode ray tubes.
Yes, well, we'll get to that because I've always been fascinated by that element. Anyway, my name's Clay. With me, as always, is Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
I'm good. I'm here on a VHS tape talking to you.
Yep, it's pretty amazing how you knew exactly what was going to be said to you. It's funny because when they first start talking about that, and his daughter's like, my father prefers the monologue. It's like, oh, why could that be? It's like, oh, because he just talks and it doesn't have to respond to anybody.
Luckily, everybody in this movie has an excellent sense of timing, though.
Yes, great edit job by his daughter for that tape they use on the TV show, though, because he's like doing the Disneyland ride thing where he's like looking at the host and then looking over at the people and kind of like nodding in response.
Turning to the next camera.
Yeah.
And turning to the next camera.
But of course, we are talking today about Videodrome from 1983, number 170 on our list. It has an 81% Rotten Tomatoes score with an 80% audience score, so pretty even there. Had you seen this one before?
Yes, but it has been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like I maybe saw this one. I don't know. I feel like for the first time at some point in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And then again, maybe with some of our friends.
Possibly.
I feel like there was a time we all tried to watch it, and most people we watched it with hated it.
That was probably my fault. That sounds like something I did. Did we watch it? I think we might have watched it at a condo once. That sounds right.
I think we did. Yeah, I will say, not to jump too far ahead, but I actually think I enjoyed it the most this time around.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's grown on me.
Yeah.
Like a tumor in my brain.
I probably saw this for the first time around the same age, probably early 20s, maybe. I know I definitely watched it with our friend Jim, I think, the first time. So that was probably some summer in college.
Just imagining the two of you uncomfortably sitting next to one another during the sadomasochism scenes.
You know, at that point, we used to do 24-hour, well, expanded past 24 hours, but 24-hour movie marathons every year. We started on 666, 6606. Nice. And we went till 12. So we did it for 6 years.
Wow.
And we expanded from, the first year was 24 hours. The second year, I think it was 24 hours, but there was some change. I can't remember what it was, and it almost killed me. Because around 4 o'clock in the morning, I started getting chest pains and stuff. And I was like, I don't know if we can do this anymore. So then we adjusted it to... We spread. I think we shot for a certain number of movies over a certain number of days, like a weekend.
Okay.
And then expanded as our lives got more complicated.
Yes.
Into, it would be like a week-long thing where we would watch a couple movies every day, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the final year was sort of a best of all the things we had watched, and it ended with we rented out the micro cinema at the Somerville Theater, where we did the Rocky thing.
I think I was there for part of this.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, you probably were.
It was early days of me knowing.
That would have been
you.
very early. Yeah.
Yeah.
12. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we watched. It was. It's funny. I put it up for a vote because I wanted to. We definitely wanted to watch The Empire Strikes Back. Mm-hmm. But the other movie we put it up for a vote. I can't remember what the other movies were, but one of them was Werner Herzog's Nosferatu, and somehow that won. I was not expecting that to win.
Sometimes I don't understand our group of friends.
And it wasn't even just them. It was I put this was like a Facebook event of just people I knew.
Wow.
And so everyone was like, yeah, let's watch the Nosferatu. Sure.
Jesus.
Okay.
All right.
But that was great. I wish we've been debating trying to bring it back in some form, but we just haven't figured out how to do it yet because everybody's got lives now and stuff. Anyway, long story short, I think I might have watched Videodrome for the first time mixed in there somewhere.
Sure. Makes sense.
I really enjoyed it, and I because I was probably making my way through most of Cronenberg's movies at that time, and I hooked into him pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He's really interesting because he kind of starts off really schlocky, and then he goes really cerebral. Like the stuff he made in the 90s post-Crash don't really feel like Cronenberg movies, but well, we can get into that too. Anyway, that's probably enough of that. We'll play the trailer for you, and we will get into Videodrome.
Why would anybody watch a scum show like Videodrome? Why did you watch it, Max? Business reasons. Sure. What about the other reasons?
Max Wren is a victim.
I woke up with a headache.
He has been exposed to Videodrome.
I've been hallucinating for a while, ever since...
What?
Since I first saw Videodrome.
His brain is already receiving video images.
I think that massive doses of Videodrome signal will ultimately produce and control hallucination to the point that it will change human reality.
Soon, his visions will coalesce and become uncontrollable flesh. Videodrome is seducing Max Wren.
Please, come to me now. Come to Nikki.
And Max Wren can do nothing to stop it.
What makes you think I need help?
None of our test subjects has returned to normality.
Television can change your mind. Videodrome will change your body.
Long live the new flesh.
It will shatter your reality. Videodrome, starring Deborah Harry and James Woods. A shocking new vision from the creator of Scanners. Coming soon to a theater near you from Universal Pictures.
Okay, Videodrome, written and directed by David Cronenberg, starring James Woods, Debbie Harry, Sona Smits, Peter Dvorsky, Leslie Carlson, Jack Creeley, and a philosophy, and that's what makes it dangerous.
Very nice.
Amanda, what happens? Try to sum up what happens in Videodrome.
Here's what the internet has told me, folks. As the president of a trashy TV channel, Max Wren is desperate for new programming to attract viewers. When he happens upon Videodrome, a TV show dedicated to gratuitous torture and punishment, Max sees a potential hit and wants to broadcast the show on his channel. However, after his girlfriend auditions for the show and never returns, Max investigates the truth behind Videodrome and discovers that the graphic violence may not be as fake as he thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad summary.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It leaves out most of the subtext.
I mean,
and thematic work. But
by necessity, a summary.
Yeah. I mean, at least it
times
wasn't
lost.
like James Woods owns a television station.
James Woods likes TV.
A little too much.
A little too much, if you know what I mean. Well, Clay, some things you'll find in Videodrome include Bad Dom James Woods.
Yeah.
He's just bad at it.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
That's, well, to be fair to him,
He doesn't really want to do it.
Yeah, it's a pretty adventurous first date to be on with a woman.
No.
Who's like, hey, let's go back to your house and hang out. By the way, could you cut me on my shoulder real quick?
Yeah, he's still bad at it. Bad Dom James Woods. A geisha dildo.
Yeah, you don't see those very often.
No,
Yeah.
rarity.
What's
Rarity.
fun is on the Criterion DVD, which I have, it has everything they shot for the Samurai Dreams sequence.
Oh my God.
So it's it's not a ton of stuff, but it's just all the
Yeah.
footage they shot for that stupid TV show.
Wow. A woman in a dress as red as the flags she's putting up.
Yes, that goes under the bad Dom James Wood category. I think she's very interesting. I don't know what to make of her, and in a way that I don't know what to make of him. Like their relationship is very odd.
Oh, we'll get into it.
Yeah, okay.
No worries. Chest gina dentata.
Yes,
For lack of a better term.
it's very clever, Amanda.
Thank you, Clay. It's almost as if I didn't write it.
What? Come on. I wouldn't say that if you didn't write it.
Conversations via cassette tapes.
Yep.
A cougar named Masha.
Yep.
Derelicts.
Many. They solve the homelessness problem via television, watching TV. Honestly,
that's
I'm surprised.
what's going to reintegrate you into society.
You know what? Let's try it.
Can't be worse than what we're doing now in America.
Can't be. It literally couldn't be worse. Instead of just taking bulldozers and pushing all their shit into the ocean, why don't we just give them all TVs and see what happens?
No. See, I have the solution to all problems.
Mm-hmm.
The cathode ray tube, the world mixing board, and the video word made flesh.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I think someone should run on this platform for public office.
I mean, if Donald Trump knew what any of those words meant, that could be his platform.
Yeah, but I don't want to vote for him. I want to vote for that platform so I can get a Long Live the New Flesh bumper sticker to put on my mother's lawn.
New Flesh 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, based on the options. Let's do it.
So, yes, Videodrome. This is a movie that's...
Yes, Clay. Please tell us.
Oh, I don't know. I'm don't really know how to drop into this one. You said that so early before I even said something stupid.
I just, the look on your face, I could see the searching in your eyes of like, where am I going to take this?
Yeah, this is a movie that I haven't watched this probably since that time I drove everybody out of the room, which I only vaguely remember. And I remember at the time being struck by how prescient it was even then, as far as some of the things Cronenberg had predicted. Like the one that has always stood out to me is he basically predicts screen names.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way that Brian Oblivion talks about,
Professor.
Professor. He didn't record all those tapes to be called Mr. Oblivion.
He didn't spend 6 years in videotape school to be called Mr. But yeah, the special. Soon we'll all have special names.
Yeah,
is what he says.
Do you remember your first screen name?
Oh God. I don't.
No.
Shit.
You're lying to me. I know you do.
No, I really want
just something
to.
really embarrassing.
It is. It is. It had the word dark in it.
Nice.
I don't remember the rest. It started with dark, and then it probably got worse from there.
In my very first experiences online, talking to people I didn't know, I pretended that I was Cajun for an entire week.
That's so specific.
I know. It was really dumb.
It's really weirdly specific.
And they never I'm sure it was clearly obvious it was not, because most Cajun people don't write in their accent. I assume.
You were just not the weirdest weirdo on the internet, so everybody went fine.
I was I was writing dialogue for Gambit from the X-Men cartoon, and they apparently seemed to be fine with it.
Cher.
Oh, I did. 100%. 100%. And I thought I was nailing it. But
see, all I did was just pretend I was about 10 years older than I actually was. Which...
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I might have told this before on another show, but when I was when I finally got my own screen name, because when we started it was like a family account for AOL or whatever. When I got my own screen name, I tried to think of the most obscure comic book thing I could possibly think of. And so what I came up with was Big Hero 6. Which at the time was an extremely obscure Marvel Comics X-Men offshoot superhero team. I did not realize they'd be making an animated feature out of it about 15 years later, and everybody would know what Big Hero 6 was, even though that's not my Big Hero 6. But it was one of those things where it was like another of those things where that I knew about comics that I was like, no one's ever gonna care about this, and now it's just popular culture that everybody knows.
Yep.
The funny thing about it was I had that name all through high school, and then towards the end of my senior year, or somewhere in my senior year, I got a message from Big Hero 6 with 2 G's, who was asking me if they could have the name.
Wait,
because It was this person who messaged me was Bigg
Yeah.
Hero 6.
Yes.
And they were asking if I would give up my name so they could have it
Why?
because that was the name of their band. And I said no. Or you know what? I said, you know what? When I go to college, it's all yours. And then I never talked to the person ever again.
I mean, you should have said no because I think they would have gotten sued if they had made any headway as a band with that name.
I mean, I
would have gotten a cease and desist from Marvel at some point.
Yeah, I'm gonna retroactively wish them all the luck in the world. But I don't know if they made it. But yeah, so the screen name thing always stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
This was a movie that always kind of like, even though I wasn't totally sure exactly what was going on,
Yeah.
I kind of like understood it.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way of kind of expressing feelings towards this movie, where it's like, if you ask me specifically what each character was trying to do or accomplish and how, I probably can't tell you. And if you ask me for concrete, like, okay, so what happened at this point?
Right.
Why did this happen? I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I still feel like I understand what the movie is trying to convey thematically.
Yeah. This time watching it, I was quite taken by it because I felt I understood it a lot more because I kind of feel like we're living through it.
Yeah.
Because it made a lot more sense to me as far as like it being the story of essentially someone who ends up in the spiral. Let's shift this up a couple decades. The story of a person who is spiraling down into the depths of the internet and ends up radicalized and ends up doing something really stupid.
Yes.
And there's a line that really stood out to me, which was I wrote it down, but television is reality and reality is less than television. And I just kind of clicked that up a few places into the internet, and I was that's pretty much it. That's the whole thing.
Because like fundamentally this movie is about media and the medium and like mediated experience where it's there's that sort of hokey, what is it, the message is the medium. Isn't that like a thing that people will kind of shorthand their way in and out of stuff?
Yeah,
by
that's
saying it?
The medium is the message. I think it's a Marshall McLuhan thing.
Yeah, one of those in one of those directions. Yeah,
which is Marshall McLuhan is actually who Brian Oblivion is based on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well then, but this really leans into that kind of philosophy as a foundational text, and then like. Nowadays, especially looking back on this movie, the idea of mediated experience becoming more real to people than reality. Because if you go to a concert nowadays, and I'm guilty of this as well, people are taking pictures and video, even though they are in front of the band.
Right, yes.
And so you're busy focused on what your phone is capturing.
Yep.
Rather than the thing that's actually happening in front of you. And we all do that a ton. I mean, there's like augmented reality and stuff now via apps and like VR headsets and stuff.
Have you experienced anybody taking pictures of a movie screen? Because I have, and it's really I feel for those people because it's really stupid. I've seen with the flash on.
The only time I've ever done something like that is if we are seeing something that's not usually in theaters, and I will sneak a quick picture of like the opening moment where the title of the film comes across the screen or something, like some iconic quick moment like that, just to like send to a friend and be like, look what I'm doing.
Yeah, when I was the only person in the theater to watch The Pope's Exorcist, I whipped out my phone and took a video of that Vespa scene and sent it to everybody and said, you have to watch this movie.
Yes, you did. You sent it to me and told me I had to watch that movie. Which I think is like this is a good jumping off point because no one is immune to this.
Right, yeah.
Like we're so mired in a culture that has normalized this type of behavior that it's weirder to be the person who doesn't do it or like if you're on the subway, everyone's on their phone.
Right.
Everyone's got earbuds in. Nobody's like just sitting reading a paper book. let alone sitting doing nothing, which is what people used to have to do on the train.
Nightmare.
Like, you either carried a book or a newspaper or magazine with you, or you sat there and you did nothing.
iPod, CD player. My iPod is the only thing that got me through traveling the subway in New
not
York.
much further back than that,
Yeah.
before there were portable cassette players and things, you had to just sit there. Like, you didn't get to have an extra layer between you and the world around you.
Right.
And now that's the default. And I think it's fascinating that this movie came out 40 years ago.
This is its 40th anniversary, yeah.
And it was very much in line with what the future was going to look like for humanity.
How do you feel about it as I was watching it, I was thinking about I actually on the DVD there's a short half-hour television program where Mick Garris, who is another horror filmmaker, interviews John Landis, John Carpenter, and David Cronenberg.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
What a crew.
It's pretty funny because like Cronenberg and Carpenter are pretty, straightforward, and Landis, you can kind of tell that they kind of think Landis is a bit of a goofball, but because he's always like kind of joking and like looking over at them, and they're just,
he's like playing for an audience a little bit, and John Carpenter's like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
But Mick Garris asked Landis about any problems he's had with the MPAA and ratings and stuff like that, and he talks about how the rating system in America is governed by what the current mores of the culture is. And Cronenberg jumps off from there and he says, well, you got to remember that America is one of the only countries in the world who doesn't have state-mandated censorship, including Canada, where when you make a movie for Canada, they take the movie, they cut the movie how they want, and then they will destroy the footage that they cut out.
Oh,
and
wow.
if you get caught projecting that footage, you will go to jail.
Is that still true today?
I have to assume no.
Okay. I really hope not. I mean, that just seems wild.
Yeah. And it made me think about this movie from the standpoint of... so basically, the reason I brought that up is because Cronenberg doesn't seem like the kind of person who is censor inclined. He doesn't seem like a conservative filmmaker.
No. In fact, I think a lot of this movie is anti-censorship.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. Is do you feel this is explicitly anti-censorship, or do you think that, because I couldn't help but think there was a little bit of, well, the point of this movie is kind of the material that you're watching rots your brain. So how did you come down on that?
But the material doesn't rot the brain. The signal they've developed rots the brain.
True, but the material is specifically activating a part of your brain that makes you more susceptible to that.
Sure, but like you could argue any heightened emotional state might do that.
Sure.
I in my opinion, the kind of this movie comes down more on the side of like, I might, what do they say about like free speech and stuff? Like, I might disagree with everything you're saying, but I'll defend your right to say it to the death.
Yes.
Like, it's kind of like that. Like, I might dislike everything you're watching, but I believe in your right to watch it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because this, in the movie, Barry, is it Barry Convex?
Yes.
One of the amazing names, one of the several
Great
amazing
name.
names in this movie. He and his organization are using the Videodrome signal, and they want to use Max's channel to target specific parts of the population that they deem undesirable. They think these are the people who are making America quote unquote soft.
Right.
And they want to eliminate them. So it's kind of like, yeah, you can watch the horrible shit you want to watch, but you're going to get what we think you deserve for watching it, which is death.
Right.
You're going to get punished for it. And what is a more effective censorship ultimately than that?
Sure.
Like, at first you're going to catch a bunch of people, but eventually people are going to realize what's happening. And it's going to make everybody say, "Oh, well, I can't trust anything I watch now because I might be getting this signal fed into my brain. And so the only things that are safe to watch are what the government says it's safe to watch, or these things that are so anesthetized that they don't arouse any strong feelings in you, so you're not susceptible to that frequency or whatever.
Yeah.
So I really think this movie is kind of showing like how censorship could be used to like curtail and manipulate an entire population and like emotional expression within it.
Yeah, I excuse me. Coughing my lungs out here.
Yeah, your tumor-filled lungs.
Yeah, I got shot with a tumor gun too much. Yeah, I found one of the more interesting aspects of it is that as Max goes down the rabbit hole, the thing he doesn't get cured of the Videodrome. He just gets counter-programmed.
Yeah.
And I was very fascinated by the cathode ray mission and this idea of
the world mixing board.
Yeah, of taking is there a word they use? Is it vagrants or
Derelicts?
Derelicts,
Yeah.
that's right. And having them watch TV to patch them back into the which is ultimately they present the cathode ray mission as sort of a positive force, but it still seems pretty cynical.
Well, it's interesting because if you extrapolate these concepts forward a few decades to now, this is the argument for making 5G available everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Good
is
point.
that people need the internet.
Yep.
People need the internet to communicate with one another. They need the internet for healthcare now. They need the internet for jobs. The way to get people back integrated into society, and as I keep like half jokingly bringing up what they say, patched back into the world mixing board, is to get them online.
Right.
It's more important for a lot of people to have a smartphone than it is for them to have a home.
Yep.
And there are all these practical reasons why that argument is kind of true, but it really does make you think about like what kind of world do we live in that's the case.
Yeah.
So I keep being blown away over and over again by how prescient this movie really, really feels.
Yeah, and I think this is more. I was a little bit surprised that this wasn't a video nasty, frankly, because it's of the era and it has a lot of the same. I think at the time you can probably watch this and feel like it's a reaction to that sort of moral panic type stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's really like it's a lot bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I feel fortunate or unfortunate to be in a moment in time where it's like, oh no, I get Videodrome now.
Right. Yeah, I get this even more than I did 10 years ago when I first saw it. Because I also think, and I will leave the comparisons to modern day alone after this, but I just have to say I think it's fascinating that, Max hallucinates and he can't distinguish TV, reality, his own nightmares. They've all really blended together.
Yeah.
And we are quite literally entering that phase of the human experience with like deep fakes.
Oh yeah.
And all of this shit where it's like AI is impersonating people in like all of the customer service chatbots are AI.
Yeah.
All of them. Even the ones that text with you that are like, "Hi, my name is Sandra." Most of those are AI.
Yeah.
And it's easy to conflate them with a real person.
Yeah.
And we are like actively living in that. The fact that like you can see something on the internet or on TV that looks extremely real and is completely faked. And it's getting harder and harder to tell the difference. So like the way Max's hallucinations progressively start taking over his life in the movie, it gets to the point where you're kind of unsure which things are really happening.
Yeah.
Like when he gets programmed by convex to go kill his partners, there's a serious moment for me where I doubt that what he thinks is happening is really happening.
Yeah, there was a point when I was watching it this time, there was a point where I started thinking, oh, is everything after he puts the helmet on a hallucination?
Right. Yeah. I kind of had a moment where I was like, oh, did I forget that in a minute? Like in the next couple scenes, they're going to take the helmet off and it's going to have all been faked.
Right.
And instead, no, keeps going.
Well, the thing that stood out to me this time is sort of using the modern lens a bit to look at it. What kind of struck me this time is that, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because what Cronenberg is actually doing is putting us inside the mind of someone who is falling apart. And so watching this movie going like, I don't know what's real. I don't know what, this doesn't make any sense. Like that's kind of the point, because when you mentioned when Barry Convex, it's like you need to kill your partners.
Yeah.
And I found that stood out to me as like the height of the delusional moment, because what he's being tasked to do is to kill his partners so this company can take over a shitty television station. And it's and he's going in there and he's shooting these people and killing these people, do this thing, and the thing that they keep repeating is kill your partners so we can take your station. It's like, this is insane.
Yes.
Like why would these people want a tiny fucking shitty
it's a
TV
paranoid
station?
delusion.
Right. Yeah. And they put you right inside of this paranoid delusion.
Right.
That the climax of which is him shooting Barry Convex in the middle of what is a pretty lame conference with a tacky medieval themed eyewear based dance number.
They're the Medici line. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where it's like the line is so unclear that the lack of clarity, I think, is the point.
Right. Like there's an interpretation of this movie that after a point, everything that happens is a hallucination. And it really is just a man going crazy.
Right.
And that in the quote unquote real world of the movie, he's just running around muttering to himself and shooting people.
Yeah.
Like none of the rest of the weirdness is happening. There was no big conspiracy. There has been no Videodrome. It's all just in his head.
Yeah. 'Cause the thing where he ends up going to shoot his partners to me was like walking into a pizza parlor and shooting people.
Yeah.
Shooting up a pizza parlor because you think that there's Satanists in the basement or whatever.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I never thought that it would play that clearly to me.
Yeah.
Because anytime I've seen it, it's like, yeah, I more or less get what's going on.
Right.
And it's pretty, all the effects are really awesome, and it's more kind of about the feel and the impression than anything else. And this time I was like, oh, I fucking get it now.
This movie also, because it's dealing with these themes and this kind of subject matter, it's this beautiful marriage of like what Cronenberg seems to be trying to convey and also his style of directing and the way he wants people to perform. Because in so many of his movies, one of my main problems at times is that his characters don't act like humans.
Very, yeah.
Like
especially the early one. If you ever seen an interview with him,
probably. I'm sure I have.
They more act like him because
Yes.
he can be very robotic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like he seems to have like a level of puzzlement
Yeah.
around human behavior. And in some of his movies, that can be a little bit of a barrier. I think especially in movies where it's showing like parent-child relationships or married couples or, you know, like things like that, it can get a little like nobody would treat their kid that way. You know,
Yeah.
This movie, none of those relationships exist.
Right.
There are no children in this movie.
Yep.
Nobody's married. People are kind of a little like he's dating Nikki, but he's not really like
Right.
he's clearly not the only person dating Nikki, and he's clearly like passionately obsessed with her in a lot of ways, but he's not trying to like get her into a monogamous traditional relationship.
Right.
Like he's not no one's interested in that. Like the normal relationships that exist in society that bind people together don't exist in this movie.
Right.
And that actually makes everybody's weird ass behavior make a lot more sense.
It does, yeah.
Because everybody is sort of having these really siloed off experiences. Whether it's because they're busy watching TV or because they work in the TV industry. Like they're at a remove at all times from one another. And that behavior meshes so well with what the themes of the movie are that it just like really works in a way that makes me question less like, well, if he was in love with her, why would he treat her that way? You know, there's none of that. It's just really deep in Max's experience. It's really deep in his perception of the world.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that the relationships that they show you are all based around media.
Yeah.
Because it's Max asks her out on TV.
Yes.
While they're being recorded.
Yes.
The next time you see them interacting, it's through a pane of glass while she's doing her radio show.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they have their date, you don't see the date part. You see the part where they're watching TV afterwards and you know, poking each other.
Right. Gotta wonder, did she bring her own needle?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because, like, why does he have that?
I don't know.
And if it was his, like, I don't know, is that sterile?
Maybe he had an inkling to pierce his own ears once and he just didn't go through with it. You know, but you know, sometimes you're like, I'm going to make this dish and you buy the stuff and then you're just like, I'm just going to have a cheeseburger.
Sure, I'm going to have these body piercings. You buy all the stuff and then you go, eh.
Yeah. What do you think of Max? I think one of the things that makes this movie really work is I think that the casting is excellent.
Yeah.
Because James Woods for Max, what separates this movie, one of the things that separates this from something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where you have a central figure who's sort of uncovering this secret plot kind of thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of times those characters are, for lack of a better term, fairly righteous.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that makes this really work is that Max is the absolute, and thanks to James Woods, the absolute right level of sleazy. Like you don't think that he's necessary. He's not like a bad guy, but he's not a pure heart, you know? Yeah.
So it was really fun watching this movie because the movie we did most recently for our Patreon coverage was Toby Hooper's Funhouse.
Mm-hmm. Patreon.com Patreon.com/Penskephone.
And this is how everybody realizes that Clay is just an AI that I talk to on this podcast.
Yes.
Ha 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 ha. But that movie is very, very sleazy.
Yes.
In a different way than this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Funhouse we talked about it, there's a level of sleaze to it that is ominous.
Yeah.
Like you feel kind of like criminal happenings are occurring around every corner.
You feel like the tape, when you take it out of the VCR, is going to have like a film on it, like a greasy film on it.
Yeah. In this, things are overtly sleazy, but it's like more matter of fact. It's not with the same level of like maliciousness.
It's a sleaze with an ethos.
Yeah, or like maybe there's like moral degradation, but it's not in service of overt evil.
Right.
It's not sleaziness as a sign that all of these people are bad and they're all horrible and they're going to do horrible things.
Yeah.
It's more of like a symptom of society and the fact that we've devalued certain things while overvaluing others. It's kind of just like the soup everybody has to live in.
Yeah.
Rather than any specific like thing that has occurred via somebody's motives. Like no one has tried to make things sleazier in Videodrome. They just are.
Yeah, Max exists
to serve an audience.
Yes. He exists in this pocket where he's trying to make a living with a small television channel.
Yeah.
And he knows that in order to do that, he needs to provide something more intense than people can get anywhere else.
Right.
So he's actively combing the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
Which, when pressed on it, he comes up with the like, well, you know, it's about people getting to see, it's a catharsis, and like
Yes.
that bullshit
Yeah.
excuse as
Yeah.
his cover.
I liked what Bianca Oblivion said when she met him, which was, you said something trite about emotion
Yes.
and catharsis, et cetera, et cetera. Like,
Yeah.
like she kind of was like, yeah, we know it's bullshit.
Yeah, it's great too because they have that scene where he kind of gives that bullshit answer, and then shortly after that is, I think, the scene where he and his partners are watching. Or is it or maybe it's before? Maybe the Samurai Dreams is before.
I think
And-
Samurai Dreams is before.
And they're like just talking about like, it's not hardcore, and like they
it's
know
too
that
soft.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the sleaze is what sells.
Yes.
And as much as you want to sugarcoat that, he knows that,
Right.
which is what drives him to Videodrome.
But at the same time, like the difference between the sleaziness in the Funhouse and the sleaziness in Videodrome is that in the Funhouse, it is immediate.
Yes.
Like it is the world you're living in. It's right in front of you. It's your experience of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Videodrome, a lot of the sleaziness is, again, it's that mediated experience. You're getting it through the television. And if everything else around you is kind of falling into disrepair, you're not noticing because you're busy over here with the TV.
Right.
But it's not the same as like actively creating that environment. It's just like passively letting things fall into this sort of lowest common denominator. But I think James Woods is amazing in this movie.
He's a great actor.
And I think he is, like you said, he's the right level of sleazy and he's the right level of charming.
Yeah.
Like, I get why people like him. Like Max, the character. I understand why, even though he's this kind of, he's in this sort of unsavory industry and he's having a morally questionable effect on society, you're sort of like, yeah, but he's not a bad guy.
Right, yeah.
He's Max. He's kind of fun. Like, he seems sort of cool. He's kind of funny.
Yeah, like the way that he banters with Masha is very funny. Where she's like, "What do I get?" And he's like, "You can take a shower with me." that was
Yes.
pretty funny.
Yes. Yeah, and even if like when he first goes into Bianca's office and he keeps saying, "Love the view."
Yeah.
I love the view. And it's just like, he's not insulting anyone. He's not mistreating anyone.
Well, there is a very quick, when he's walking through the halls of his office, there's a woman getting coffee, and he just
Does give a little ass
little
grab.
butt grab.
Yeah.
But she just gives him a big smile, so
Yeah.
maybe they have.
Maybe they had a thing.
Yeah,
Who
maybe she
knows?
grabs his butt and he grabs hers, and everything's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most PC work environment, but if it works for them.
Yeah.
But the other thing I find really compelling about him is that he's not all in on the sadomasochism.
Yes.
Like, he is seduced by it and he clearly finds it compelling, but he has a struggle within himself. You can like tell in moments with Nikki where he cannot resist her, but part of him knows he should try.
Yeah, Nikki is definitely the kind of girlfriend that in your fantasies you think you want, but then you realize you're in way over your head.
This is like the hokiest possible reference I could make, but she reminds me of the TLC song Waterfalls.
Yes. Which verse?
All of them. All of that whole song is about like biting off more than you can chew in the form of like other relationships, like human relationships.
Yeah. Gang violence, AIDS, Videodrome.
Yeah.
That's most
I
people
mean-
forget. They never play the extended
Yeah.
full left eye rap
Yeah.
when they play it on the radio.
Yeah, where she says, "Long live the new
Yeah,
flesh."
it's about Videodrome.
Yeah. But she is pushing Max further than he would have gone on his own.
Yes.
Like right away. He's not the type of guy who sleeps with women and routinely hurts them.
Right.
Like, that's clearly not, when she's like, "You could cut me," just kind of like in conversation. She's
Very
like,
casually.
"Yeah, you could cut me. You could cut me right here." And he's like, "What? Why would I do that? Why do you have cuts there?" "Oh, just a friend."
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, this is like, she's always pushing him further and further into it. And he's not the most active participant all the time.
Right.
Like, he sort of, he gets there eventually with her encouragement, but it's clearly not like his comfort zone.
Right.
To be that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I think that seeing that he's not fully bought in to the sort of sleaze that he shows on his channel,
Mm-hmm.
like he still has some, for a while at least, separation between like, yeah, this is the stuff we show, but that's not what I want to do.
Right. He's like the movie producer or director who makes horror movies who's like, I actually don't really care for horror movies.
Yeah. I've always been more of a rom-com person myself. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the Jamie Lee Curtis thing where she was in like 5 horror movies. She's
Right,
like,
but she hates them.
hate horror movies. I never watched them.
Yeah. I also have to say, I think Debbie Harry is amazing in this.
I was going to ask you next about Nikki.
About our walking red flag.
Yes.
She's so good.
She is. I was reading this. I came across this retrospective by a guy named Walter Cha that's on RogerEbert.com. It was out in February. Really, really good article. Highly recommend it. And it talks a bit about her in that, like, almost part of the thematics of the film plays off the fact that the person who is Nikki is a internationally known pop star or rock star who is kind of playing the sort of woman you fantasize that Debbie Harry from Blondie might be.
Yeah.
And so it's like multiple so she doesn't really have to do that much.
Yeah.
And she really doesn't, but she's good. She's very good.
I don't think she needs to do that much, and I think if she had tried to do more, it wouldn't have worked so well. Like, I think the subtlety and the sort of low-keyness of her performance is what makes her seductive. Like, you can understand why Max is infatuated with her, because she's a weird person. She's a weird, compelling, beautiful presence that seems to exist on a slightly different planet than everybody else around her. I also think it's really interesting that she is a radio host.
Yeah.
Who does a show called Emotional Rescue.
On C-RAM?
On C-RAM. It's not pronounced cram, you guys.
Nope.
C-RAM.
C-RAM.
But it seems like she does this radio show where she talks to people in deep emotional crises. And they even have like the emotional rescue crisis hotline or something.
Yeah.
Like, so this is what she does all the time. This is her job, is to be on the other end receiving other people's emotional pain. So the idea that like she's taking in all of these people's trauma and like mental distress, and she finds an outlet for it by physically harming herself kind of makes sense to me, as like she's trying to exist in this sort of closed circuit of like people dump all their emotional stuff into me and I give nothing out. Like she's kind of a cipher outside of it, and she just wants to be hurt, but we don't get anything else from her. She's just like, I have to absorb all of this.
She's a very controlled presence.
Yeah, she's also like a social sin eater. She's just like absorbing all of this stuff, and something has to give.
There's also I always found that scene where he goes to meet her at the radio station kind of odd, because the way that she's dressed, she kind of looks like she's been working out.
Yeah,
like I couldn't tell if that was just an outfit or if she's wearing gym clothes. Because she's got it's kind of like a sweatshirt and like a headband kind of thing, and I keep thinking she's kind of like sweaty. And
and I think given the fact that we usually see her as very put together and like poised, I think that might be a little bit of a nod to how difficult her job is. That it's like it's like running a marathon for her. So like you gotta be in your comfortable clothes. She paces around the studio while she talks to people, trying to talk them off the ledge. And who knows how many hours of this she does at a time.
Right.
So it's kind of an interesting way to see her in that moment.
Yeah. What was the other thing I was going to say about her? She's great.
No notes.
Yeah, I find her to be I'm always surprised at how quickly she's kind of out of the movie. I mean, she's not really ever really out of the movie, but she becomes a more of a ghostly presence.
Yeah.
Pretty quick. She's only got like 2 or 3 scenes where she's interacting with James Woods.
Right, and then after that,
in
she's
the old
kind
flesh,
of,
anyway.
Yeah, she's kind of co-opted as like an image or a tool.
Yeah.
After that, there's no saying like, is any part of this really Nikki, or is all of this just his hallucinations or some manipulation of her image to manipulate him?
Yeah. I also find it strange, not strange, but she throws around the word lover a lot.
Yes.
Like someone would say buddy or pal.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in movies a few times. I have never ever encountered somebody who does that in real life.
Calls people lover.
Yeah.
Blech.
And it always sounds strange to me.
Yeah, it's not.
Thanks, lover.
Ugh. Ugh. No thanks.
Like if you were just at like McDonald's and you turn to the person next to you, he's like, could you hand me one of those napkins? And they pass to him and go, thanks, lover. Ugh.
Yeah. Like I've just been sexually harassed. I find the female characters in this movie really fascinating because I actually think this is one of Cronenberg's movies that's nicest to women, ironically.
Yeah, probably.
There's some movies where he's not necessarily overtly cruel to women, but in this they seem like a more, I don't know, the point of this movie is not quite so much like what are women? What's with them? They're all weird. I don't understand, and I don't get their parts, and I don't get how they work.
Imagine if you were like them, but in your chest.
Yeah. But even then, it's not. You know, the women in the movie are not either just completely monstrous or completely like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think generally the thing with the women in his movies, they tend to be clearly elements of mystery and the unknown, which ends up putting them in a strange category. Because I would say, just off the top of my head, the only movie of his that I can really think of from like his golden period anyway, where the main character is a woman, is The Fly, and that's like a co-lead.
Yeah.
You know, but like I think,
and that's also not an original concept of his.
True.
Yeah.
True. And I do feel in that movie she's Gina Davis in that movie is not treated the same way. I think she's more of an actual person than in most of his movies. But yeah, there's generally the female characters tend to be objects of the unknown and mystery. And I don't really feel that in this as much as some other ones.
Yeah, Nikki kind of is, but the mystery is less about her specifically and
That's the
more
thing,
about what
yeah.
happened to her and like where she has gone.
Yeah.
But like you get Bridie Jones, his girl
Yes.
Friday.
Yes.
Who I love and wish had more of more moments in this movie.
I'm gonna start asking my girlfriend to leave me wake up tapes.
That has your first appointment of the day on it and reminders not to forget to take out the trash or whatever.
Yeah, it's just gonna say, Clay, it's time to get up. You've got nothing really to do today.
That's a lie. But like Bianca Oblivion, I really great name, and I like her as a character. Like I think she's different than a lot of the other women in some of Cronenberg's stuff, where like, yes, she's kind of a symbol of mystery, but she's more the keeper of a mystery.
Yes.
Than she is the mystery itself.
Yeah.
And she's like more active. Like she's trying to preserve her father's legacy. She's got the cathode ray mission that she's trying to do something good for society with. She's curating all her father's tapes and kind of sending them out, and as she says, doing her best to try and keep him alive.
I love that concept.
Yeah.
Because I remember the last time, I think one of the last times I had watched this, one of the other things that stood out to me in a contemporary fashion was, for some reason, I don't know if I knew someone who had died or what, but I started thinking about the idea of passing away, but your online presence remaining.
Yeah.
Like the idea of these Facebook pages that still exist that you can still interact with.
I mean, it's even more intense than that now. Apparently, people have tried to like train chatbots off of other people's like chat logs
Well,
and
it's like
emails.
that episode of Black Mirror with what's his name, Donald Gleason and Haley Atwell, which is fucking brutal. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this. It is this kind of modern idea of life after death in a way where it's like, well, are you dead?
Right.
If you still exist in some form? Or is this thing that exists in your place now completely inhuman and completely like is this something new? Is this is Bianca cutting up these tapes to create new things her father says, the furthering of his being, or is it just this ghastly monster?
Right. Or is it not even a ghastly monster, but just sort of inert?
Yeah.
Like,
is Harold Ramis showing up as a ghost in the new Ghostbusters movie a touching tribute?
Yeah.
Or an inhuman ghastly display
right.
of technology gone awry?
All of the Tupac hallucinations.
Yes.
Holograms. Hallucinations too. But yeah, it's sort of the difference between like, you know, saying you want to have video or audio or letters or whatever from a loved one when they pass because it makes you feel like you still have a part of them. The difference is having something that seems to respond to you in new ways. Then it's kind of like, wait, like where have we gone now?
Yeah.
Who
is this for?
Yeah.
That's always the answer, the thing, right? Like the preservation of something after you die is not for you, the dead person.
Right.
It's for the people who loved you or whose life you were a part of.
Right. And in Videodrome, Bianca's justification is that her father still has so much to give to society. And she thinks she needs to keep him alive as a way to fight against Videodrome.
Yeah. I would love personally to see a Bianca Oblivion movie. Because there's so much interesting stuff going on over there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, her whole setup. It's like, wait, how did you get here? Like, what are you showing people on TV? Are you just showing them what's on, Channel 4 or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, how does this work? Why does it work? Who's working with you? Like, she's got staff at the mission. So these people clearly also believe in what she's doing. What else is on all those tapes?
Yeah.
Yeah. She thinks people are coming to kill her. And obviously they are, because they send Max to kill her.
Yeah. What did you think of Barry Convex and Harlan?
They're such weird characters. I think the Harlan turn is actually pretty well done.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah. And when he turns on Max, it's both surprising and believable.
Yeah.
Like, it all kind of fits together when you see it, because it does make very little sense that he's somehow the only person in the entire world who magically can tap into this signal.
Do you are you aware of, I was gonna look this up before we started, but I forgot.
F for this episode, you fail.
Yeah, well. There was a period of time, I think around this era, where what Harlan was doing was something, it was like the early days of hacking.
Yeah.
Where, there were some people who were hacking into phone lines and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And there were other people who were hacking into video signals and transmitted TV signals.
Yeah.
And there's one instance, I don't remember where it happened. I apologize, everybody. I know you're probably screaming at me. Where someone hacked into a signal of a Doctor Who episode, I think, and pirated the signal, and for like 10 or 15 seconds broadcast their own signal, and it's like super fucking creepy. It's like I think it was like the guy from Max Headroom but the dialogue that was on top of it was like really weird and ominous. And
Ooh.
I think ultimately they figured out what it was in the years that passed, and it was just kind of a goof. But it was one of those things where it's like,
if you were just sitting at home watching your episode of Doctor Who,
Yeah.
and that cut in,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's like my nightmare.
yeah, the aliens are here and they're going to kill us.
Yeah, I've probably said before. I'm sure we've come across this kind of thing somewhere in our episodes, but the idea of breaking that fourth wall, especially in your own home, in a
Yeah.
way that you're not ready for,
Yeah.
terrifying to me.
Yeah,
Terrifying.
from something you think you have total control over.
Yeah. One time in college, back when this stuff, I don't know if these things keep going. They're probably a lot more malicious now, but a friend of mine sent me this link and told me it was for one thing. And I clicked on it, and my computer freaked out, opened like 15,000 windows, and my CD drive opened, and I lost my fucking mind. Like it was like I felt the hand come through the electric waves or whatever.
And that's really interesting because that's not the same as like nowadays getting like rickrolled or whatever.
Right.
Because it's sort of a passive experience now. Having a piece of hardware in your home actually move is very different. You know?
Yes.
Like having the CD, because the CD drive used to be the disc holder that would pop out and extend out of the tower of the computer. So like it's not, nowadays most disc drives, you just, if you even still have one,
I don't really have them
you
anymore.
just like slide the disc in and then you hit the little button to have it come out. This was like a piece that would come out of the tower, and it's like, oh, somebody has gained physical control of an item in my house.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah,
I
that's
can't wait for my Alexa to start talking to me.
floating in the air, following you through the rooms.
Just for completion's sake, the max headroom signal hijacking occurred on the night of November 22nd, 1987. Ooh, that's when Kennedy died. Anniversary. What does that mean? Coincidence? When the television signals of two stations in Chicago, Illinois were hijacked, briefly sending a pirate broadcast of an unidentified person wearing a Max Headroom mask and costume to thousands of home viewers. You can see the picture.
Yeah,
right
it's
here.
pretty
That's
terrifying.
fucking terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, if that just busted in on my like late night watch of my like comfort TV show,
Yeah.
no thank you.
Plopping down to watch a nice episode
Yeah.
of old Doctor Who,
Yes.
and then no.
Yeah, and
no,
then
thank
that
you.
comes up on your screen. All your kids are crying.
And this is 87, so this is 4 years after Videodrome. So
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah, Harlan's another one where he says patron a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think people talk like this.
No, they don't.
And if I knew a person who ended
It's
every
like calling
sentence,
somebody Cher all the time.
yeah. Well, I guess let's not jump to conclusions about bad. I guess. Yeah, I love Barry Convex.
Yeah, and that the glasses conference.
One of my
pretty
favorite
great.
lines is when he's telling him about his business, and he says, "We make inexpensive glasses for third world countries and missile guidance systems for NATO."
Yeah. I also find that you've got Barry Convex, and then you've got Masha, and they're both producing these like shows
Yeah.
that are based in pretty far back history. So like Masha's softcore porn is Apollo and Dionysus, and it's all of these like women, naked women being nymphs and like dudes in like a sheer
Togas and
toga.
yeah.
And it's this very kind of hokey softcore porn thing. And then you see the stage show for the Medici line.
Yes.
And everybody starts off in these sort of Italian Renaissance costumes, and then they take them off, and they're in skimpy little leotards doing a dance number. These two things are not that far apart from one another.
Correct.
And I love that. And I love that like a big deal is not made about it.
What you're saying is, at your conferences, you want to see more topless dancers.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
whatever. All the conferences I go to.
Hey, another platform. Run on it. You'll win.
Here we go. Topless everyone at conferences. But I love how it highlights Barry Convex's hypocrisy without really having to hammer it home too hard. It's just kind of put out there. And then he's shot to death, and his body cracks open and erupts in what looks like tumors.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait a minute. this is the guy who's saying he's going to use this signal to get rid of all the weak and the soft and all the undesirables who would watch this filth. But he is also filled with tumors. So does that imply that he has also been watching all of this filth?
I don't know. Maybe the gun shoots tumors. That's a very David Cronenberg thing. It's like this gun actually just shoots tumors.
Yeah, this
at
gun
people.
does shoot tumors.
Have you ever seen Existence?
No.
We should watch Existence at some point. It came out the same weekend as The Matrix and has a lot of similar themes as The Matrix. I've seen it once. I don't remember a ton about it.
I just remember the weird styling on the title.
Yeah,
Like, we're going to make
it's-
the X and the Z big.
Yeah,
Everything
it
else
was
is going to be small.
It was definitely they were trying to shoehorn David Cronenberg into late 90s style,
Yes,
which
yes.
not a great fit. The only thing I really remember is that at a certain point, Jude Law's character is in this sort of like I can't remember what the deal is, but anyway, he has these things he knows how to do, but he doesn't know why he knows how to do them.
Yeah.
And he's at dinner and he's eating this chicken. And as he's eating the chicken and piecing, taking the meat off the bones, he realizes he's using the bones to make a gun. And then he reaches into his own mouth and pulls out his bridge work of like 5 teeth and pops it into the handle of the gun like a clip.
Oh my God.
And so he makes a chicken bone gun that shoots teeth, which is one of the most David Cronenberg
Yeah,
things I
that's
can
an
think of.
extremely Cronenberg sentence that you just said. Wow. Sounds fun.
But yeah, speaking of tumors
Yeah.
and exploding and goopiness.
Chest gina dentata.
Yes. The special effects in this, A+.
Yep.
Rick Baker, obviously, master.
They're so goopy.
Yeah. It's
Lot of-
interesting,
lot of goop.
the chest cavity thing,
More like an abdomen.
abdomen
cavity.
cavity, is very memorable, but the thing that is the most memorable, because it's on all the posters, I think, is the TV.
Yeah.
The TV that pulsates and you can stick your face into. And it's such a cool effect.
It's all so it's so unnerving. Like I find it because like we've had like the torture porn subgenre of horror movies has been around for a while now, and some of those things are hard to watch, right? Like you watch some of the Hostel movies or some of the Saw movies, and some of the stuff they have people do, you just you cringe and you look away, and it's just like ugh, I don't want to watch somebody gouge their own eyeball out to get a key from the back of their eye socket. But I find most of that stuff less memorable.
Yeah.
And then there's stuff like this that just does the right combination of that like nightmare logic, uncanniness, and it just sticks with you. And there's something, even though it's not bloody, really, I think the only time any of it, I mean, there's some blood, but it's not as bloody as you would expect.
Right, yeah.
But there is something like everything pulsates.
Yes.
Everything sort of
He's big on pulsating, yes.
pulsates and like exhales, lots of like sighs and like squishes. It's really gross.
Yeah. Yeah, the pulsating videotape is interesting.
Yeah. I love the first time one of the videotapes pulsates and James Woods just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. The thing I've always found the most hilarious is when Harlan sticks his hand inside James Woods and pulls out, his hand has been turned into a grenade.
Yes.
Like a disgusting flesh grenade.
Like rather than a cassette player, James Woods' abdomen is now a 3D printer.
Yeah, it doesn't just like bite his hand off.
Which is what I thought it was going to do.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it turns it into a grenade.
Yes.
That then explodes and blows him up.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all excellent. I guess, how do you feel about the ending? It's tough. It's tough to. I feel like it's tough to talk about this stuff in any kind of like minute detail, only because like
Yeah.
I think once you frame it as, oh, this is a delusion, you're watching, you're taking part in the destruction of a mind due to delusion. It's like it doesn't really matter what happens. It's like, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want to argue that somehow in the world of this movie there really is a quote unquote new flesh that Max is going to ascend to along with Nikki, which like I don't believe is what this movie is really going for. But like, if you want to have that interpretation, it's still just so esoteric and vague to go in that direction that it's tough to talk about. But yeah, the ending is kind of the only ending this movie can have.
Apparently, he didn't know how to end it.
Fair.
And one of his early thoughts was to have, I think it was Nikki, Max, maybe a couple of the other characters basically have what sounded like it was going to be the grand shunting of like a big orgy.
Yeah.
Where they've all it sounds like a very much a first draft of a Cronenberg thing. Where it's like, what if they all have an orgy but they've got like weird new sex organs? It's like, all right.
And they all just kind of melt together.
Yeah, it's like, all right, David, good warm up.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the drawing board on that one.
It's like tweak that, dial it back a little bit, tune it in. Yeah, well, I mean, I think by the end of this movie, excuse me, there is nowhere for Max to go.
Yeah.
Like, there's no coming back from this. Like, he has fully sank into his delusions or fully been absorbed into this other kind of shadow world where things like Videodrome are manipulating people on a genetic level. And either way, you don't just roll back into your old life.
Right.
Like, you've killed your business partners, you've killed these other guys, you blew a hole in a wall using a hand grenade that's literally a hand made into a grenade. So yeah, I mean, I think by the end he has to die. I think what the ending tries to do is give him some agency back by kind of showing him an option and allowing him to choose it for himself.
Yeah.
I don't know how far that interpretation really works, but I think it's trying to let him kind of go out on his own terms a little more so than if like Harlan had shot him.
Sure.
You know?
Right, yeah.
Or the cops gunned him down.
Yeah, if he dies at the eyewear conference.
Right. Or he kills Harlan and Convex, he escapes, but eventually the cops find him and there's a big,
and he yells, "Long live the new flesh," and gets gunned down by the
exactly.
authorities.
Yeah, they all just crouch behind their cars, shoot at him over the hood, and he dies.
That's the thing that's kind of I find ambiguous as well, is that phrase "long live the new flesh" is something that comes from Bianca, right?
Yeah.
And it is said in a very sort of what's the word? Triumphant kind of manner.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it is necessarily the stuff that she's selling is any more something you want to ascend to than whatever Barry's selling, you know?
Right. I mean, at least it's sort of like it's like, who is going to be in charge of this destructive thing? It's either the people who are going to use it to censor and to destroy people, or the people who are going to try and use it to somehow better society. Is kind of how it boils down. Their methods might also be bad. Like no one is morally safe in this world. Like, nobody is pure good.
Right.
But there's Barry Convex and there's Bianca and Professor Oblivion, and they at least think that television can be harnessed to reintroduce people into society, to reconnect people to humanity in some way, whereas Barry's crew is like, no, we're going to give everybody brain tumors.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, when you have that choice, there's really only one direction you can go in if you want to at least have some sort of net positive effect. The interesting thing is, I don't know how much Max chooses either of them.
Oh yeah, sure,
like
absolutely.
He's kind of just programmed and then reprogrammed. So it's like the same question you apply to Nikki applies to Max by the end, which is how much of what you're seeing is really him.
Right.
And how much of this is just him, his image, literally his body, which is the actuality of your image, has been co-opted and is under the control of other forces. And like, does he even have any autonomy by the end of the movie?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, I find it fascinating, this movie fascinating, because this is not something I think you can remake, because I don't know exactly how this stuff was received at the time, but like imagine doing this movie now. I'm not even saying remake it. Like imagine if it didn't exist and they just made it today. Imagine the scene where he goes to the cathode ray mission, which wouldn't be called that. It would be called something, the bit bar mission or something. And everybody's like, they're handing out smartphones to people.
Yeah.
You'd go like, this is so fucking stupid. This is so incredibly on the nose and dumb. But for some reason, I don't know if it's because of the fact that this is 40 years ago or if because of the fact that it's all analog technology. I don't know what it is, but it feels so much more impactful than if you tried to do the same thing now. It would just come off as really kind of cheap and lame.
Well, I really do think this movie is... I think this movie's great, but I think at this point, especially the way you and I have been talking about it, it's really benefiting from being a hindsight thing.
Yeah.
Where it just so happened that it really was kind of on the nose about things that are now huge problems, even more so than they were when this movie came out.
Yeah.
The trick is that that's really difficult to replicate because you would have to try and use today's technology to say something about what you think these very specific problems are going to become several decades in the future.
It really is a speculative work.
Yeah.
In the way that
he just so happened to be corrected about not everything, but about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, he does project into the future in a way where I feel like a lot of science fiction that tries to do this kind of stuff now, I don't know if it's because like we are at a point in history, or if you want to call it, we are at a point in the future where it is, we have advanced so much, it's actually harder to speculate what's next.
Change happens so fast now.
Because I feel like a lot of these things, science fiction stuff now is more kind of like, yes, that is what it's like right now. And less than it is, this is what we might be looking at in the future.
It's funny because this kind of reminds me of so Margaret Atwood wrote a trilogy that's sort of a speculative sci-fi trilogy. It's really great. But the first book came out, and then it was quite a while before the second and the third books came out. In my opinion, the first book of the trilogy is the best one. She put that book out before smartphones were really a pervasive thing, if I recall correctly.
What's the name of the book?
Oryx and Crake.
Oryx and Crake?
Yes.
That's where I bought all my dishware.
It's the cool bar down the street where you can get a $15 cocktail. In the second book, all of a sudden, she starts including the mention. I don't think she calls them iPhones specifically, but she starts talking about like personal computing phones or something. You know, like that's a worse phrase than she uses. She uses something that's like fine, but when you already live in a world where everybody has a smartphone, you would just say smartphone. And in the book, they're the same thing. Right. And it's almost like it was more believable and easier to immerse yourself in the first book, where there was no talk about smartphones, cell phones. She talked about the internet, obviously. That was part of it, but it was left in a more vague way that you could kind of let your imagination fill in the gaps. When she started trying to put more specific names on it, it felt more dated.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difficulty with this kind of thing, where it's like once you start naming things, you're already making them obsolete in a way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and I think what this movie gets right too is it doesn't well, the stuff that it is presenting to us is so so abstract that it's not like someone pulls out something and says this is an iPhone. This is a personal. It's a lot more abstract. It's a lot more thematic.
Yeah,
and using the modern technology of the time to tell a speculative story about the future.
Yeah,
and not just rooting it in. It's like a phone, but it's also a computer, and you keep it in your pocket.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's no sort of like, soon we plan on having tiny televisions implanted in everyone's forearms so that they can watch it every day. You know,
right.
like it's not
It doesn't go to that. Yeah.
right. It's just sort of saying like, no. There's this technology, and we're going to figure out a way, and we're going to use it to do X.
The only time they do that is with that giant headpiece thing,
Yes.
and you're just like, well, that's never going to happen. So
Right. This is
forget
just
about that.
weird enough that now we don't even. And it comes at a point where you're like, is this even really happening?
Right,
Does it
right.
even really matter if it's really happening? Let's just roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, watching it this time, I actually kind of feel like it's a bit of a sister film to They Live. Because I
Yeah.
feel like They Live is kind of
All about glasses.
Yep, all about glasses. There's
All about TVs.
TVs, TV signals. There's a church that deals with what's the word again? Not vagrants.
Derelicts.
If only Max Wren had run into John Nada,
Ah, there you go.
then maybe
Maybe these happen
They
in the
could have taken
the
down-
same universe.
the Videodrome.
Yeah.
That article by Walter Chaw that I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to pull out one thing that I thought was interesting. It says, among the many brilliant things about Videodrome is when Max imagines impossible things, Cronenberg portrays them as, quote, real in the body of his work, thus aligning Max's point of view with ours and suggesting in doing so that our brains are being damaged in the act of watching Videodrome the movie in the same way that Max's is in the act of watching Videodrome in the movie. The idea driving Videodrome is that the moment technology allowed individuals to consume only what they wanted to consume, they would become intellectually frozen and ideologically perverse.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that way about a lot of people these days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I
Myself included at times. I don't
Yeah,
think, again, I
I
don't
know.
think any of us are immune to this.
was just going
Like,
to say, we could talk about this for another half an hour, but it's
Yeah.
like, I hate the fact that, like, when I'm watching a movie,
yeah.
I remember when they first started doing like the third screen type stuff where it's like on Amazon, if you want, you can hit pause and like look up stuff and some actors and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, who the fuck is going to want to do that while they're watching a movie? And now every time I'm watching something, my hand drifts over to my phone.
Yep.
Pulls my phone over.
Yep.
Oh, what's he from? IMDb.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was in that. Oh, this is only 2 years after that other thing that I saw him in.
Yep.
You know who that guy is? That's the guy from Boston Legal.
Yeah.
No, not him. Like the third lead.
Yeah, wait, when did Boston Legal come out? How long was that on TV again?
Yeah.
You know, and you just fall down these like rabbit holes while
Yeah.
you're watching a whole separate thing.
Yeah, it makes me angry that I do it, but
Yeah.
you know, that's
Hard,
where we are,
hard.
unfortunately.
Again.
The music, obviously by Walter Shore. It's okay. I don't love it.
Yeah, I don't really even remember it very well.
Yeah, I was trying to listen to it for a bit, and there's a certain, I love synthesizer soundtracks,
Yeah.
but there is a certain style of synthesizer soundtrack, try saying that multiple times very quickly,
No thanks.
that I just hate because it always sounds cheap. It's
I think some of the music in this movie did make me think of like the RPGs I've played that were
Yeah.
from like the year 2003.
Yeah, it's when they use synthesizers to try and emulate string sound, like actual instruments. It always sounds bad, I
Yeah.
think, anyway. I think it always sounds cheesy. And there's some of that in here, which I didn't love. But
Yeah.
is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. Like you said, I think we could just keep going on this
Yeah.
one. This one is a rich text, as the kids like to say.
How do you feel about the placement? It is number, what did I say, 170?
Yeah.
Number 170, higher, lower, off the list?
I feel pretty good about where it is.
Yeah. Would you call this a horror movie?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know what else you would call it.
Yeah, I feel like Cronenberg's are tough to categorize.
It's sort of a more horror movie if you think about it and you let yourself be put in Max's position. Like if you really let yourself think about what it would be like to be him and to be losing your grip on reality the way
Yeah.
he is and experiencing the changes to his body that he is being forced to experience and his loss of free will. Like I think if you can kind of try to empathize with him, you can see why this is a horror movie.
Yeah, I feel like you could say science fiction, but
Yeah.
if you were to do that, it would have an asterisk, and then the explanation would start with when Marshall McLuhan published his landmark and then like a paragraph to explain why this is science fiction.
Yes, an academic treatise attached to it. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about the placement?
I think it's good where it is.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's in such a weird pocket
Yeah.
that I wouldn't want to put it higher on the list towards number 1. But I also, I think it's a good movie. I think it's really, it is so well developed. Isn't that a weird way to phrase it? But I think it's just like a total package. Like Cronenberg clearly had a really specific vision for how he wanted everything in this movie to go, how he wanted things to look, how he wanted the sets to look. Like, and it really is, when you look at it in its totality, a pretty impressive film.
I think it's one of his first really good-looking movies too.
Yeah.
Because his early movies I don't think are very visually.
Yeah, not
like,
really.
Scanners is not really that great looking, and even the Brood is getting there.
Yeah, but
there are
there's
moments
still,
of brilliance in the Brood, but it's still very kind of like
there's still some kind
normal.
of blah.
Yeah. But this like all the stuff at night with him and Debbie Harry in the apartment's really nice looking. And, yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's without taking into account any movies that are listed higher or lower, I would say 170 is a pretty good place to put this.
Yeah.
I hit the randomizer button. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, 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 beep, boop. And up next, we will be going to number 86. We will be heading, I don't know if I'd call it overseas, because the land in which this movie takes place doesn't actually exist. It's more of a fairy tale land created on the Universal backlot in the 1940s. We will be watching The Wolfman.
Yay!
Which I'm very excited about.
Yay, Wolfman. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love The Wolfman.
Super pumped. I like that. That's a fun turn from this one into something a little more classic.
Videodrome also, in my head, I only think of this because these, like, Wolfman I think is pretty short. Videodrome, in my head, it's like that movie's like 2 hours.
Yes.
It's like 86 minutes.
Yeah.
It is a fast movie.
I had the same exact reaction where I was like, man, I remember this being kind of a slog to get through.
It moves
at
real
parts.
fast.
And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, shit. This is less than 90 minutes.
They
This is
pull
great.
in the first scene where he sees Videodrome, like in the static, is like maybe 10 minutes in the movie.
You're like 6-7 minutes into the movie.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. If you'd like to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/thepensky-file, where you can follow along as Amanda and I delve into the Video Nasties list. What month is this? September? September, we will be doing Dario Argento's Inferno. In August, we did Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse.
The aforementioned
Funhouse. July Bay of Blood, I think.
Sounds right.
Mario Bava's Bay of Blood. Some pretty
Yeah.
heavy hitter names in there.
Yeah. Sleepaway
All
Camp.
surprisingly, no, that was on the main
No,
feed.
that was on the main
That was a
feed.
wild card, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
All pretty good for the most part.
Yeah.
We differed in opinion on Funhouse a bit, but I think for
Yeah.
the most part we've been enjoying everything we've seen.
Yeah, I definitely haven't sunk to the mental depths
Yeah.
that some of the Friday the 13th or the second string of Stephen King movies took me
Yeah.
to.
I don't know if you can say one can enjoy Possession, but
Yeah.
I think as close as you can get to enjoying Possession is probably where I am
I
with
think there's a
Possession.
level of appreciation
Yes.
one can have.
Yes.
Yes. So with that glowing recommendation,
Yes,
please
follow along. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Clay.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Long live the new flesh.